Part 21. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 201. The reason why Qi Xian was killed last time was because of the principle of killing a chicken to scare the monkey. By beating Qi Xian angrily and intimidating others so that others don't dare to underestimate Fang Gu, he can also reduce some troubles and save them one by one. After all, Fang Gu still has to practice. Also, Qi Xian's provocations in the past few days made Fang Gu feel a little bored, so in today's competition, he gave him a little show. Thinking of this, Fang Gu waved to Zhou Yi and said, "I'm getting ready to move into the outer gate. From now on, you and I have nothing to do with each other." Zhou Yi nodded and said nothing. After saying this, Fang Gu didn't care about Zhou Yi and packed his bags. After a few breaths, Fang Gu had packed his luggage and headed straight for the outer door under Zhou Yi's gaze. Looking at Fang Gu's leaving figure, Zhou Yi put his hands on his back, his eyes twinkling, and murmured, "I have to say, this person may really be a person in the future. In terms of his words, deeds and behavior, he is not an ordinary person at all. What I can have, if I had not said those words and chosen to make friends with him early, maybe my future path would be broader, but..." Having said this, Zhou Yi sighed again, with a trace of regret on his face. Finished. Zhongmen Peak. Inside the splendid, solemn, and majestic Tianqian Palace. 8 black pillars reaching the sky are spread on both sides. An ancient black dragon was carved on the black pillar. The black dragon opened its scarlet eyes and swam slowly as if it were real. Qin Xian's tall figure floated quietly in the center of the hall, and the power of law began to surround him one after another, as if Qin Xian was a high-altitude god at this moment. The laws around him seemed to be the world under his control. As if he felt something, Qin Xian opened his eyes, and a trace of golden light appeared. The fiery light emitted by the golden light made Shang Guan Suanfeng's figure appear. Seeing Qin Xian, Shang Guan Suanfeng's cold face suddenly turned into a smile and respect. "Master." Qin Xian nodded lightly. "Long time no see. You came to see me as my master today, and you didn't just come to say hello, right? Is there anything you want to report?" After hearing Qin Xian's words, Shang Guan Xianfeng nodded respectfully and said softly, "Master, I found a genius with ordinary qualifications in the sect." Qin Xian raised his eyebrows, as if he had guessed something in his mind, but he continued to ask, "What's your name? Why is it an ordinary qualification?" Seeing this, Shang Guan Xianfeng replied, "Report to master. His name is Fang Gu. It is not clear why he is a disciple with ordinary qualifications, but I watched his battle today and found that this person is definitely not as expected. It's so simple." Hearing the question, Lin Tian nodded, cupped his hands and replied, "Master, according to your request, during the half-month in the Central Territory, the disciple carefully observed the movements of the Tiangong and found that the Tiangong was still as peaceful as usual. No matter how we provoked and put pressure, the people from Tiangong never showed up, and seemed to be indifferent to everything we did. Say it." After Shang Guan Xianfeng left, Qin Xian stood at the head of the hall, looked at Lin Tian and asked, "Did you find anything?" After pondering for a while, he said, "Master knows, you don't have to worry about this matter. This person has his destiny, and he can do whatever he wants. There is no need to test it. Gold will always shine. Maybe one day he will turn from silver to gold. After all, Son of Fortune's guesses are always accurate." After Shang Guan Xianfeng finished speaking, he turned into a stream of purple light and disappeared into the hall. Furthermore, he has cultivated to the martial artist 9th layer, but he still has the strength to fight across levels. The following points are enough to show that this person is extraordinary. Master, I think you should test him and see. Where is his limit? Senior sister, I haven't seen you for a long time. You're welcome and okay. Junior brother, we haven't seen you for a few days. Tell me about it. Qin Xian raised his eyebrows with an interesting look. Lin Tian touched his head and said nothing. Yes, master. During today's competition among the handyman disciples, I saw that he defeated the disciples of the martial master 8th layer with the strength of a martial artist 9th layer, and that person's qualifications were still middle grade. One idea after another appeared in his mind, but Qin Xian rejected them one by one. At this moment, in the central territory, a storm is surging in the darkness. The signs of the coming storm seem to be coming soon. Hearing Lin Tian's answer, Qin Xian's eyes showed speculation and he said nothing. Qin Xian had this guess before, but he was not sure. Now that Lin Tian said it, he can be sure. After the battle that day, Qin Xian sent people to carefully observe all the movements of Tiangong, because Qin Xian knew that the tasks assigned by the system were definitely not as simple as imagined. After hearing this, Lin Tian nodded, remembered Qin Xian's instructions, said obey, and disappeared from the place. Looking at Shang Guan Xianfeng standing next to Qin Xian, Lin Tian looked stunned for a moment, and then he smiled and cupped her hands. Hearing this, Shang Guan Xianfeng smiled sweetly. When Lin Tian saw this scene, he didn't bother his master. Just stand there quietly. My disciple suspects that this heavenly palace may have some backup plan. I even think that if they don't take any action now, they are preparing a backup plan to deal with us. And my disciple also guesses that this backup plan may be something from the upper world. In addition, my disciple also observed that this person with low-grade qualifications has been able to practice to the martial artist 9th layer in just a few days. This speed of progress is probably only comparable to that of high-grade qualifications. But, the most important thing now is that the 3 months are getting closer and closer, and Qin Xian doesn't have that much time to raise the sect value. Whether it is to be destroyed or not to be destroyed, this requires him to make a decision. Then Shang Guan Xianfeng seemed to feel bored and said, okay, you should have something to say to master, I won't disturb you anymore, let's go first. It will take time to destroy Tiangong, at least until he has 3 high-level martial emperors. The major forces cannot calm down for a moment. Within the forces, there is always talk about the war between Tiangong and Profound Heaven Sect. A genius with ordinary qualifications, if nothing else happens, this person should be the son of fortune. Seeing this, Shang Guan Xianfeng nodded slightly and said nothing more. After hearing this, Qin Xian nodded slightly. After a cup of tea, Qin Xian looked at Lin Tian and asked, in this case, you should take the order of being a master and explain to the Soul Palace and the Shadow Palace, and let their forces threaten Tiangong. Look at Tiangong. What will happen? But remember, it is just a threat, not a declaration of war against them, otherwise if you make them anxious, there may be an unnecessary battle. Shang Guan Xianfeng joked. Thinking of this, Qin Xian frowned. Another few days have passed. At the same time, Lin Tian's figure appeared in the hall. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 202. Heavenly Palace Emperor's Palace. I saw dozens of figures standing in the hall with solemn expressions. Each of them looked very solemn and solemn. His brows were furrowed to the extreme. These people are the remaining strong martial emperors in Tiangong. These people are either subordinate forces, or they are strong men hiding in the dark. In addition to them, there are 3 deist figures standing at the throne. Sitting on the throne is the dignified and gorgeous Li Ziyun. Wearing a purple and gold trimmed dress, Li Ziyun's temperament is fully displayed. As for the 3 deist figures around her, they are, Guao, Tianyi, and Duan Ming. They are the 3 emperors of the heavenly palace, and they are all powerful men at the pinnacle of the martial emperor. But their expressions were in sharp contrast to the rest of the martial emperor. The 3 of them did not frown like the other strong martial emperors. Instead, they always maintained a calm expression, and their expressions never changed. It seems that even if the sky falls, it will still be like this. On the throne, Li Ziun stared at everyone's expressions. His expression did not change, and he did not accuse them. Her red lips opened slightly and she said, "You should also be aware of the current situation in Profound Heaven continent, right?" When everyone heard this, they looked at each other and nodded. Of course they knew, and they even had the idea of running away. Recently, the two major forces of the Soul Palace and the Shadow Palace have been attacking the subordinate forces of my Heavenly Palace. I have also checked it out and found that the scene is simply horrible and the death situation is extremely miserable. Every force in the Soul Palace and Shadow Palace is full of corpses and ruins. There are countless corpses broken into pieces. The combined blood can probably fill a lake. At this point, Li Ziun's eyes dimmed slightly and he sighed, seeming to be mourning for the group of dead people. After a few breaths, he continued, "This also means that the power of our heavenly palace has been greatly reduced. The destruction of those forces has caused the death of the strong martial saint half-emperors. Even 2 martial emperors have fallen. As expected by this palace, I believe that it won't be long before these 2 major forces can't help themselves and start attacking us. The current situation is just to test whether we will come forward and whether we will take care of the subordinate forces. So you should know what's going to happen next." After the words fell, Li Ziun stood up and looked down at everyone with his eyes. He was as domineering as a superior empress and must not be blasphemed. There was a hint of probing in her words, just to test everyone's stance. Will they choose to stay? Or go? After everyone heard this, they didn't dare to look at him, they all lowered their heads, closed their lips tightly, and didn't dare to say a word. Of course they understood what Li Ziun meant. Seeing that no one answered, Li Ziun's expression remained unchanged, but he sneered in his heart, as if he had already guessed this scene. Seeing this scene, Guo's eyes were half squinted, and the murderous intention flashed in and out of it. The slight aura emanating from him made everyone tremble and feel uneasy. The same goes for Tianyi and Xuanming beside him. But Li Ziun waved his hand to the 3 of them and said through a message, "We still need them now, we can't kill them." After the 3 of them heard this, their eyes flickered slightly and they put away their murderous intent. Li Ziun slowly exhaled, tried to calm himself, looked at everyone again, and said, "There is one more thing I forgot to tell you, that is, have you discovered that the forces of the Second Palace have never had any relationship with the Profound Heaven sect? Contact? Not even a small battle. It seems that no matter how powerful Profound Heaven sect is, it is still weak. The Second Palace will not do anything to it, as if it has reached some kind of agreement." Everyone looked at each other again, frowning. When Guo heard this, he narrowed his eyes, held his chin and fell into deep thought. After the last battle, he discovered that the strong men such as Martial Saint and Martial Venerable, who had clearly used the space gems to leave long ago, did not come back, as if they disappeared out of thin air. This news was reported to him by the martial emperors he saved, otherwise he wouldn't know it yet. At that time, Guo was still wondering, didn't Qin Xian just send a few martial emperors to chase him? Logically speaking, even if those martial emperors were strong, they would not be able to catch up with them who had already escaped. But the fact is indeed the case. None of the escaped people came back, and no shadow was seen. It was not until a few days later that the mystery was solved. It was an elder from Tiangong who discovered a large number of corpses in the valley in the distance while he was out. This news has come out, everyone in the heavenly palace is shocked. You are so courageous that you dare to fight near the Tiangong. When Guo heard the news, he went to check and found that it was indeed that group of people. Even so, Guo found that these corpses were very dry, without a trace of blood, as if they had been sucked dry by something. This makes Guo a little confused. Even if they have been dead for a few days, it is impossible for them to dry up so quickly. What's more, the strength in front of them is still very powerful. How difficult is it to dry up? Without 1,000 years, it would be impossible. But who is that? Looking at all the forces in the entire Central Territory, who dares to provoke Tiangong in public? I'm afraid there's no one except the Second Hall and Profound Heaven Sect. But as far as Guao knew, the Second Palace would only massacre and not suck their corpses dry, and the Profound Heaven Sect was also a legitimate Dao sect, so it was even less likely that they would do such a terrible thing. Thinking of this, Guao had a trace of doubt in his heart, but he still dared to conclude that these people must have been killed by the Second Palace, because he was all too familiar with the wounds on those corpses. It's the sharp blade commonly used in the Second Palace. As for the body being sucked dry, Ao has yet to guess who it is. Immediately, he looked at everyone and said, "Palace Master, what you said is correct." As expected, the Second Palace and Profound Heaven Sect definitely have some kind of relationship, or they are cooperating, or maybe they are. The master behind the palace is Profound Heaven Sect, and the Second Palace is just its pawn. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked, and their expressions showed disbelief. If this is really the case, then what should we do, Palace Master? At this moment, Nan Xiao, who was wearing white clothes and had been silent, suddenly stood up and asked. "Yes, Palace Master, if this is really the case, what should we do?" Everyone couldn't help but look at Li Ziun, wanting to get an answer. Seeing this situation, Li Ziun glanced at everyone lightly. He sat back on the throne again with a calm expression. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 203. Whether it's the Soul Palace, the Shadow Palace, or the Profound Heaven Sect, our Tiangong is not afraid of them, so what if we come together? At worst, we have to fight to the death, but I want to see if their strength alone can compare to my Tiangong's. Thousands of years of foundation. Don't forget, my Tiangong still has a backhand and hasn't moved yet. After everyone heard this, their originally panicked expressions suddenly calmed down. Everyone was really scared before, but since they heard that Guao failed to defeat Profound Heaven Sect, they have started to panic. If even the Bone Proud can't defeat the Profound Heaven Sect, how can they defeat it? So they had the slightest idea of running away. Although Li Ziun's words made some people's petty thoughts disappear, it was not all. After all, anyone with a discerning eye can see that the current strength gap between Profound Heaven Sect and Tiangong is not big, it is just that it is very close. Afterwards, Li Ziun calmed everyone down and waved them back. After everyone left, Li Ziun finally couldn't help it anymore, frowned, stood up, clenched his fists, bit his pink lips lightly, and said angrily, "A bunch of rubbish, nothing happens to them usually." When they were young, they always spoke calm words and never seemed to take all the forces into consideration. But now, the catastrophe of the Heavenly Palace has arrived, and they are all thinking of running away, right? What a bunch of supercilious eyes. I wonder who gave them such cultivation and strength. Humph. After finishing speaking, Li Ziun returned to the throne with great momentum, his face flushed. At this time, the words Li Ziun had just spoken were still heard in the hall, and they lingered for a long time. Hearing this, Tianqi and Duanming looked at each other without speaking. It's not that they are heartless, but that they don't know how to coax a woman. He couldn't help but look at Guao and started to signal him with his eyes. The two of them knew about the relationship between Guao and Li Ziun. Seeing this, Guao nodded. Even if the two of them didn't say anything, he would comfort her. After all, she was her woman. Who else could comfort her besides himself? Immediately, Guao came over, gently patted Li Ziyun's delicate and snow-white jade shoulders, and comforted softly, "Okay Ziyun, don't be angry, let alone because of this group of people, after all, you are the one who will be angry in the end. When we finish dealing with Profound Heaven Sect and those two forces, everything will be fine, and I will personally clean up this group of people by then." Hearing Guo's comforting words, Li Ziyun nodded, no longer angry as before, and leaned slightly on Guo's chest. This scene was seen by Tianyi and Duan Ming. The two of them didn't communicate too much, and disappeared into the imperial palace very wisely. "Guo, do you think we can really defeat Profound Heaven Sect?" Hearing Li Ziyun's words, Guo closed his eyes and shook his head. In a magnificent and splendid palace, Guo murmured a few words and clenched his fists. How sad it is that two people who love each other cannot come together. If the other half dies, how sad the other half will be. After hearing Guo's series of words, Li Ziyun had tears in her eyes, closed her eyes, and leaned on his chest without saying a word. "I will die." These two words made Li Ziyun feel a slight pain in her heart. She had not endured this feeling for a long time. Retirement is a dead end. After all, you and I are not on the same path, and there is no need for you to pay anything for me, because it's not worth it. I will deal with the calamity that God has inflicted on me myself. As soon as he finished speaking, Guo's aura exploded instantly, and cracking sounds could be heard in the imperial palace all the time. Li Ziyun didn't care about the problem of breaking through to the semi-immortal realm, but looked up at Guo's sharp chin and asked, "Profound Heaven Sect, outer door. It would be great if you could also break through to the semi-fairyland, so, we wouldn't be separated." Hearing this, Guo did not look into Li Ziyun's eyes like before, but shook his head and sighed. She didn't want Guo to die, but there was nothing she could do. After all, Guo himself was involved in the battle that day. Even if he chose to retreat at this time, there was no way to escape Profound Heaven Section chase. "I don't know, and I can't guess. After all, the high-end combat power of Profound Heaven Sect is not inferior to that of my Tiangong. Just one Mo Chen can fight against me, let alone the other strong men hidden in Profound Heaven Sect. How happy they would be without the appearance of Profound Heaven Sect." Li Ziyun did not speak, but slowly leaned against Guo's chest. Although it was very warm, Li Ziyun was not happy at all. Profound Heaven Section, Profound Heaven Section. At this moment, he had a respectful expression on his face, his head lowered, and he stood there tall and straight, standing as tall as a spear. Hearing Li Ziyun's words, Guo let out a breath and smiled on his face. He raised his head and sighed, "The semi-immortal realm is indeed my last wish in life, but a last wish is just a last wish after all. If we can't break through, we just can't break through, and we are separated, then let's separate." In the eyes of others, arrogance never shows tenderness. Only when he is around Li Ziyun will he show such a look. A pair of eyes looking out at Wanju Lake. "How about you?" There is melancholy and sadness in her beautiful eyes. "I don't know, maybe, I will die." The gentle expression turned into a cold one instantly. He immediately looked at Li Ziyun and said swornly, "Don't worry, Ziyun, when the war comes, I will rush in front of you and protect you to the death. It's just a Profound Heaven Section, how can I be afraid of it? Even if so, what if I gave my life? I have lived for so long and I have lived enough. I have made too many mistakes in my life. I killed my brothers and tens of millions of innocent creatures. Maybe the emergence of Profound Heaven Sect, it must be the sanction of heaven upon yourself. If you really will lose, then Ziyun, just go back to the upper realm. After all, with your talent, it is only a matter of time before you can break through to the semi-immortal realm. But I won't lose." She never knew who would win or lose. What Li Ziyun was sure of was that she would not die, but Guo would die. "There are thousands of thoughts in my heart, and pictures appear in my mind one after another. They are scenes of falling in love with Li Ziun. Li Ziun opened her lips slightly, and her eyes were a little dim and lost their original luster. And above him, there was a man with a majestic face and a snow-white robe standing there. Fang Gu's figure appears among them. Well. Seeing Li Ziun like this, Guo sighed slightly and stroked Li Ziun's hair, feeling the smoothness and warmth in it, and his face revealed a hint of tenderness. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 204. The man was seen with his hands behind his back and asked in a deep voice, "You must be Fang Gu, who has caused a lot of trouble among the handyman disciples recently, right?" Hearing this, Fang Gu's eyes flashed and he nodded. "Yes, Elder." Seeing this scene, the man with a majestic face suddenly showed a kind smile, walked over and patted Fang Gu on the shoulder and said, "You are very good. You must have suffered a lot to reach such a situation with ordinary qualifications. Of course, this also shows how strong your willpower is. It is undeniable that you are indeed worthy of my admiration." Hearing the man's compliments, Fang Gu touched his head and just smiled. There is no pride at all. Seeing Fang Gu's unmoved expression, the man nodded secretly, very satisfied. This boy is neither humble nor arrogant. He can become a great person in the future. Then he asked, "Your road will be very long in the future. I wonder if you have a master to teach you." The man's words made Fang Gu stunned. He thought about it for a while, but then he shook his head. He cupped his hands and replied, "No, the disciple just entered the sect not long ago, and he didn't accept anyone as his teacher." "Then do you want to become a disciple?" Fang Gu said nothing, and his face showed a trace of hesitation. To be honest, Fang Gu didn't want to become a master. After all, with his experience and vision, who else in the profound heaven continent could be his master? "I'm afraid I don't have one, because none of them are qualified." The man looked at Fang Gu's expression and felt a pity in his heart. He waved his hand and said, "Okay, you don't have to insist on what I just said. I just asked you. If you don't want to worship, then I won't force you. After all, I understand your character and you only like to be alone. I don't like making friends and becoming brothers." As soon as he finished speaking, a token appeared in the man's hand. The man looked at the token in his eyes and handed it over. Looking at the token in front of him, Fang Gu was a little confused. He looked at the man in confusion and asked, "I wonder what the elder means by this." The man smiled, waved his hand and said, "It's not interesting, I just think highly of you, take it. With this token, I believe you can practice better in the outer sect, and it can also solve a lot of troubles and worries for you, because not all disciples are of good character. If you meet that kind of arrogant disciple, as long as you show this token, he will not offend you and will even please you." This, hearing the effect of the token, Fang Gu's eyes narrowed slightly, and he hesitated in his heart. He didn't know whether to accept it or not. Fang Gu guessed in his mind that this elder must be befriending him, otherwise why would he give this token? Seeing this scene, the man seemed to have guessed what Fang Gu was thinking. He turned his back to Fang Gu and said, "You don't have to worry about what impact this token will have on you. I'm just giving it to you. After all, this elder, I'm very optimistic about your persistence and willpower. If it were anyone else, I wouldn't have this thing to give him. Also, you don't need to think about it. If I wanted to make friends with you, why didn't I give you this token when you were a handyman? Why wait until now?" Hearing this, Fang Gu looked a little embarrassed. "It seems like I'm overthinking it," Fang Gu said to himself. He also knew that if he continued not to accept it, he would be disrespecting the elder, so he nodded slightly and accepted it. "Thank you very much, elder." The man nodded. In front of the mountain peak, there were several profound heaven sect disciples wearing Qingxian Taoist robes. With my martial artist 9th layer's strength, I don't seem to be able to meet the conditions for flying with a sword. After he finished speaking, the man's face showed a trace of suspicion again. Do you still want to fly with a sword? Hearing this, Fangu scratched his head, raised his hands and asked, Senior brother, I would like to ask, if you want to go up this mountain peak, do you have to learn to fly with a sword? Although Fangu himself has the skills to cultivate in the upper world and has more spiritual power than people in the same realm, he still does not have the spiritual power to fly with a sword, unless at this time, he breaks through to the martial master realm. Is this road passable? What? The man raised his brows, with a hint of disbelief in his eyes, and said in surprise, Junior brother, don't scare me. Could it be that you don't even have the realm of martial master? Finished. It's not that Fangu is afraid of death, but that in this life, he has to be careful and don't gamble his life just to achieve temporary success, because it's completely unnecessary. It's cultivation. Just when Fangu didn't know what to do, a sound of footsteps suddenly came from behind Fangu. The man nodded and said, that's right, you can't reach the top of the mountain without practicing sword flying, unless your strength is comparable to that of Wuzong. Fangu nodded awkwardly. I wonder what kind of trouble this junior brother has encountered. The man asked with a smile. Junior brother asked me this, is it possible that I still don't know how to fly with a sword? A shadow appeared in front of Fangu. Seeing this, the man smiled and waved his hand, it's okay. Flying with a sword is very simple. Senior brother will teach you. Because you must have the strength of martial master 5th layer to practice sword flying. If you are below the 5th layer and you still forcefully practice sword flying, your own spiritual power will not be able to support it at all, and it will gradually dissipate like an hourglass. Then, a few disciples stopped talking, and a spiritual sword appeared under their feet. Seeing this, several people moved and stepped on it. The next moment, the spiritual sword turned into a breeze and moved towards the top of the mountain. Then Fangu stepped forward, but his brows furrowed slightly. After half a stick of incense, Fangu came to a tall mountain peak that towered into the clouds and could not be seen to the end. Ta ta ta. Seeing this scene, Fangu covered his forehead and said helplessly, Brother, what I lack is not the martial skill of sword flying. After the words fell, the man took out a martial arts book from his robe. The two didn't talk much, and Fangu also walked out of the hall and walked towards his residence. Fangu had a trace of doubt in his heart, ready to see how the people in front got up. It seems that the outer disciples have the status of living on the mountain, which is not bad. What's more, this mountain peak is so high, even if Fangu had the idea, he wouldn't have the guts to gamble. This person is a handsome man with a delicate appearance and long hair hanging around his waist. His snow-white robe makes him look like a scholar. There are 4 characters written on it, flying with a sword. Fangu sighed helplessly. What is that? The man showed a trace of doubt. Because what you see in front of you is a rugged mountain road, and there are many maple trees near the mountain road. It doesn't look like an option at all. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 205. Fangu coughed a few times and nodded. Seeing this scene, the man did not speak. Instead, he began to look up and down at Fangu, holding his chin and slightly lost in thought. The next moment, the man seemed to have thought of something, his eyes were startled, and he said in a shocked tone, is it possible that you are the Fangu who recently defeated the martial master 8th layer and was promoted to an outer disciple with the martial artist 9th layer? Right? Fangu nodded. Another trace of doubt appeared in my heart. Am I so famous? Even the outer disciples know about me. So you are Fangu. It's okay. Senior brother will take you up. Seeing Fangu nodding, the man laughed, patted his chest and said. Then, a green longsword appeared under his feet. Seeing this, the man waved his hand to Fangu, telling him to come up. Seeing this situation, Fangu did not refuse and stood up. He had a very good impression of this person. The next moment, the man's spiritual power moved slightly and began to cover the blue sword. The sword flashed with green light and flew towards the top of the mountain. After a few breaths of flight, the two of them arrived at the top of the mountain. What you see before your eyes are houses and pavilions one after another. This kind of house is not an ordinary building like that of a handyman disciple, but a very spacious one, the kind where aristocratic families lived in ancient times. Among them, there are countless outer disciples walking back and forth, some holding hands, some laughing, and some sitting on the edge of the cliff enjoying the scenery. This category is generally Taoist couples. But Fangu didn't pay attention to these, but looked at the middle of all the houses. There is a martial arts arena that can accommodate thousands of people. Fierce battles were still taking place in the martial arts arena, and the sounds of colliding spiritual energy and concussions resounded in everyone's ears from time to time and lingered for a long time. There are many people flying with swords like Fangu now. In addition, at the top of all the houses, there is a splendid hall made of mahogany standing there. This hall is where the elders of the outer sect live. Is this the outer door? Fangu whispered with burning eyes. Seeing Fangu's expression, the man who was controlling the sword smiled and said, "How is it? Is the outer door good?" Fangu nodded and said with a smile, "It's really good, at least the handyman can't compare." Then he remembered it again, looked at the man and asked, "I wonder, senior brother, what kind of benefits can outer disciples have?" The man pondered for a while and replied, "The treatment." Let senior brother think about it. After a while, the man pointed with his finger at the large house not far away and said, "That's what's in front of you." He opened the doors of houses one after another until he came to a stone room rich in spiritual energy. "Hoo. Junior brother Fang, this is where you live." "Senior brother, I won't go in. I have something to deal with. If you don't understand anything, you can come to me. I live not far from you. By the way, outer disciples will get a 30% discount on elixirs and spirit weapons when they purchase them in the section. After all, these benefits seem to be the only one. Although it seems a little small, it is actually a lot. Look at the other benefits in the Central Territory. What does the sect look like? Compared with us, he is a complete beggar." Immediately, Fangu sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and began to practice in seclusion. Fangu smiled and nodded with satisfaction. At this moment, as soon as Fangu entered the door, there was a buzzing sound around the house. The next moment, a flickering magic circle appeared in the house out of thin air. The benefits are still very good, especially the secret realm training that makes Fangu very curious. Having said this, Fangu walked around the house. Under the leadership of Shan Yu, the two came to an antique house. This was the house Shan Yu mentioned just now. Then Shan Yu returned to his house. As long as it's a secret realm place, there must be great opportunities. Seeing this scene, Fangu showed a hint of curiosity and stepped in. Fangu didn't feel anything was wrong with the breakthrough so quickly, as if he had guessed the scene a long time ago. Even if it can be practiced, it will take too long. It will take at least tens of thousands of years to explore the formation, but you can only get some of the essence. Wave after wave of spiritual energy merged into Fangu's body and entered the meridians and Danshan. When the man heard this, he looked stunned. He didn't understand why Fangu asked this. But he still nodded and replied, "Of course there are. Such disciples usually have strong backgrounds. Just don't mess with them. I will tell you when I see them." Afterwards, the two of them didn't say much. Looking at the glorious and majestic house in front of him, Fangu walked straight in without any hesitation. In addition to the house, there is also 1 month's salary for the outer disciples, etc. I roughly calculated that, excluding the elixirs, it is about 3,000 low-grade spiritual stones, plus a secret realm training. Good. Fangu nodded and asked again, then what is your name, senior brother? Junior brother doesn't know it yet. Hearing this, Fangu smiled and nodded, with a hint of gratitude in his heart. No wonder Fangu was so surprised. Because if you want to practice two fusion formations, the required formation skills are very difficult, and people without special physiques simply cannot practice them. I didn't expect to break through martial master like this. When Fangu looked at this scene, his originally dull expression suddenly showed a hint of surprise. In this way, Fangu broke through to the realm of martial master. Fangu looked up and nodded. After all, Fangu has been in the realm of martial artist 9th layer for almost a few days, and the spiritual power in it has been almost accumulated. He only needs an opportunity to break through, and this stone chamber is his opportunity. As soon as he came in, he felt the surging spiritual energy rushing towards his face. The spiritual energy rolled into his body like the Yangtze River. This feeling made Fangu feel very comfortable. The next moment, he heard a bang coming from Fangu's body. Sound. The man's handsome face smiled, my name is Shan Yu, you can just call me senior brother Shan from now on. Good. Fangu said nothing and nodded. The influx of this kind of spiritual energy made Fangu's face feel relieved. He opened his eyes and secretly praised, the concentration of spiritual energy in this stone chamber is more than 10 times better than that of the handyman disciples. Correct. Fangu's eyes lit up, as if he remembered something, and asked again, senior brother, I wonder if there are any disciples trudging arrogantly inside the outer sect. It turned out to be a fusion of isolation formation and defense formation. I didn't expect that Profound Heaven continent has such a master of formations. This Profound Heaven sect is really extraordinary, Fangu thought to himself. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 206. After saying that, Fangu closed his eyes again and started practicing. Once he started practicing, he never stopped, he seemed to be addicted to it. Time passes slowly like this. One day later. Fangu, who was in the stone chamber, opened his eyes and slowly exhaled a breath of turbid air. He glanced at his body, clenched his fists, and nodded slightly. Yes, Fangu has broken through to the first layer realm and reached the martial master second layer. This speed is not unpleasant, but Fangu is a little dissatisfied. The speed of this improvement is a bit slow. If you want to reach the strength of the previous life and don't know when it will be reached, you must speed up, Fangu murmured. In fact, the speed of improvement of square bones is not slow, in fact it is very fast. Because even with supreme grade qualifications, geniuses with their own physical constitution cannot improve their realm as fast as Fangu. It is already good that they can break through the first layer realm in 3 days. How about a pervert like Fangu, who will not be able to improve even the next day? I have broken through the second layer realm and am still complaining about my slowness. You have to complete some tasks. Training like this won't improve you much at all. To improve your realm, you need spiritual stones and pills. Thinking of this, Fangu stopped practicing, stood up, raised his eyes, and walked out of the house. As soon as he walked outside the house, Fangu stopped and scratched his head. He doesn't seem to know where to get the quest. I have been practicing hard these days and have never been familiar with the Profound Heaven sect and so on. Thinking of this, Fangu couldn't help but sigh. He stroked his chin and couldn't help but think of what Shan Yu said to him before. His eyes brightened slightly, and he walked towards the house on the side. As soon as Fangu approached, Shan Yu, who was practicing, noticed it. When he saw it was Fangu, he stopped practicing, used his skills, and appeared in front of Fang Gu. "What's wrong? Did you encounter something you don't understand?" Hearing Shan Yu's inquiry, Fang Gu nodded. He raised his hands and asked, "Yes, senior brother. I wonder, senior brother, do you know where the mission dispatching place is inside the Dao Sect gate?" Task. Shan Yu looked stunned, raised an eyebrow and said, "Junior brother, are you ready to take on the mission now?" Fang Gu nodded. Seeing this, Shan Yu sighed and shook his head. "Junior brother Fang, I advise you to be patient. The tasks assigned by the sect are not simple. It is difficult to complete with your current level of strength. I suggest that you should at least reach the level of Martial Master 7th layer or above. Otherwise, there will be a disaster of life and death. Judging from your current situation, I think it's still too early. How about you practice for a few more months? Don't be in a hurry to get it right now." Hearing this, Fang Gu shook his head and waved his hand. "Brother, you don't need to worry. Junior brother has broken through to the Martial Master realm 1 day ago. The purpose of accepting the mission is to stabilize the realm and strive to break through to the first layer. And junior brother himself has a sense of propriety. He will only do some relatively simple tasks and will not choose more difficult ones." Hearing Fang Gu say that he had broken through to the Martial Master realm, Shan Yu's eyes flashed with surprise, but he still shook his head and persuaded, "Junior brother, the Martial Master realm has only reached the qualifying line, and has not reached the 7th layer. Senior brother advises you not to go. I know you want to improve your strength as soon as possible, but it will take some time. Although you have broken through to Martial Master and are very talented, it does not mean that you can accept the mission. I think you should carefully consider it. If you accept, it's not worth it to lose your life before completing the task." But Fang Gu still looked firm and shook his head. "Senior brother, don't worry. Junior brother has his own sense of discretion. Please tell me where the mission hall is." Seeing this scene, Shan Yu sighed, knowing that trying to persuade her would be of no use, so she nodded and said, "Okay. Since you insist so much, then senior brother won't bother to persuade you. Senior brother is also free today. I can help you complete the task and reduce your burden. After all, it is difficult for you to perform the task alone. The two of you have to take care of each other." Hearing this, Fang Gu did not refuse and nodded. I felt a hint of gratitude to Shan Yu in my heart. "Say it." Fang Gu, led by Shan Yu, arrived at a large hall with the name Mission Hall written on it. At this time, countless Profound Heaven Sect disciples in the Mission Hall were walking back and forth in Qingxian Taoist robes, and the auras faintly emanating from their bodies reached martial spirit at the lowest, and even reached Wuzong at the highest. Seeing this scene, Fang Gu looked at Shan Yu and signaled with his eyes. Shan Yu nodded and walked to the left-hand side of the hall with Fang Gu. There are 4 places to get quests in the main hall. They are called Tian, De, Xian, and Huang respectively. The sky is the highest and the yellow is the lowest. This represents the level difficulty of the task. In the middle is the heaven level mission, which requires the strength of martial sovereign to take it. The two of them walked to this place, which said yellow level mission area. A golden jade stone appeared in the eyes of the two people, and golden words appeared one after another on it. The golden text jumps and changes from time to time, which means that this task has been taken over. Beside the two of them, there are dozens of people who are thinking about which task to accept. Junior brother Fang, I think this is the way to go. This difficulty level is slightly easier. Shan Yu pointed her finger at the golden text at the top. Fang Gu heard this and looked along his fingers. Yellow level low grade mission, obtain the wind snowflake in the myriad monsters forest. After completion, you will receive 5 high grade spirit stones and a purple spirit pill. Fang Gu shook his head and pointed to the bottom task with his finger. The reward for this task is too little, I think it's better to do this. Yellow level high grade mission, hunting Black Demon Sect disciples, there is no limit. The more you kill, the greater the reward you will get. Shan Yu frowned and was not optimistic about this mission. She looked at Fang Gu and said, "Junior brother Fang, people from the Black Demon Sect are not easy to kill. If you are lucky, you may be able to meet a few with lower strength. If you are unlucky, you may be chased by several martial arts masters. Are you sure?" Fang Gu nodded and said firmly, "That's it." After all, the person who sent this task didn't mention the reward. As long as we complete this task, what if we can get something good? The rewards for other tasks are too small. It's better to be a big reality. Ken. There was a trace of hesitation on Shan Yu's face. Although he said he wanted to help Fang Gu, it didn't mean he was going to die. Hunting down people from the Black Demon Sect is not a trivial matter. It requires at least several disciples to join forces. The most important thing is that there are only 2 of them. How can it be accomplished? Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 207. Seeing Shan Yu's delay in replying, Fang Gu understood the difficulties and thoughts in his heart and said slowly, "Senior brother Shan, if you think this task is too difficult, you don't have to participate. Junior brother can also complete it alone." Shan Yu glanced at him without saying a word, her eyebrows furrowed and she fell into deep thought. A pair of eyes kept jumping, the expression kept switching between rejection and acceptance, and the palms were slightly clenched. Completing this mission may give you an opportunity, but if you fail to complete it, you will die. Die. When Shan Yu saw the word death, she flinched a little, her eyes were long and dim. He was hesitant in his thoughts, and couldn't help but think of what his master said to him before he died. Your talent is not high, you are only middle grade. If you don't work hard and fight hard, then your life will only stop here. I know your fear, but is fear useful? It is useless at all, because once you embark on the path of cultivation, you will never be able to be ordinary in your life, and the same is true for mortals. Besides, the road of martial Deo goes against heaven. In the eyes of heaven, you are just an ant, and it will not value you, because mortals are mortals, and the years are pitiful, but in a hurry of 100 years, when these years pass, it is just a withered bone, the death of all living things. It never values it. What does it value? It values the group of people who work hard and persevere on the road of martial Deo. Such talents are valued by him, and not like you. This group of people has that perseverance, they have that spirit, they are never afraid, nor are they afraid of the word. After my master dies, I can no longer protect you for the rest of your life. This may be the last time my master talks to you like this. Don't be afraid, fear is useless. The things you fear will continue to come after you die. What should you do at that time? It is completely impossible to live a carefree life. If you want to live without worries, if you want to be carefree, then you can only become a powerful martial Deo and reach the highest level of this continent, so that you can live a life without worries. So, my teacher once again advises you to let go of your previous fears and instead work hard. If you don't work hard, you won't be carefree. The path of cultivation itself is not smooth. It is full of crises and difficult to move. My teacher was also like you back then. Come here. Think about it carefully. Yes. Living a carefree life is not what I want. What I want is to gain greater strength. Since I don't have that talent, I'll work hard and try my best, and now this opportunity is right in front of me. Shan Yu looked at Fang Gu. Fang Gu has talent, courage, and perseverance. The fact that he can complete the leap at this stage is enough to prove that his future path will definitely be broad, and he is also my only chance, otherwise there will be no chance in the future. It's a chance, so. Thinking of this, Shan Yu's eyes became firm, he looked at Fang Gu, nodded and said, "Okay, I will complete this task with you, and I also want to try a path that I have never tried before." When Fang Gu saw this, he smiled in his heart. There was a trace of relief on his face. To be honest, Fang Gu wanted Shan Yu to accept him very much. After all, he felt that Shan Yu was a friend and brother. Although this is the case, it does not mean that Fang Gu is very attached to him. If Shan Yu refuses this time, the two will not have much intersection in the future. After all, their paths are different and they cannot conspire against each other. But now Shan Yu accepts it, it means that the two of them can be said to be working side by side in the future. In that case, prepare quickly. Yeah, Shan Yu nodded solemnly. Scenes of things to prepare begin to emerge in my mind. If you want to hunt down the disciples of the Black Demon Sect, you must be fully prepared, and defensive law treasures, magic circles, spirit weapons, elixirs, etc. are all indispensable. Then, the golden words on the jade stone instantly turned into a token and fell into Shan Yu's hands. It's a small boat big enough for 5 people. I saw Shan Yu wave his hand. After all, senior brother has been staying in the outer sect for so long. How could he not have saved anything? Senior brother won't brag to you. Even if he encounters the powerful martial sovereign of the Black Demon Sect, senior brother will always be able to escape. I didn't expect you, senior brother Shan, to still have this. There are 2 small wings on the left and right sides of the hull. A flying spirit weapon appeared in their eyes. Early the next morning. Phew. Shan Yu shook his head and said, "No, he is not a force like Tiangong. He must be in charge of some cities for commercial transactions and auctions. Otherwise, where will their spiritual stones and cultivation resources come from?" At the same time. Boom. The next moment, the boat made a buzzing sound and flew away into the distance. The 2 of them arrived above a city with iron walls. Profound Heaven Sect, a mysterious hall. When they arrived at the place, the 2 looked at each other without saying a word. Shan Yu and Fang Gu arrived at the gate of Profound Heaven Sect early. Otherwise, how could I, your senior brother, come here? A few hours later. On the boat, Fang Gu looked at the people coming and going, and asked with a somewhat puzzled expression, "Brother, why are you here? As far as I know, the Black Demon Sect's headquarters should not be here, right?" "That's natural. I bought this spiritual stone after saving it for a long time. It's easier to travel when encountering a situation like today. Some people are riding carriages, some are riding huge monsters, and there are also mysterious strong men flying with swords." Shan Yu glanced at him and explained, "This city is under the jurisdiction of the Black Demon Section. The city owner's name is Yuan Tian. This Yuan Tian is also a member of the Black Demon Sect, and his own strength has reached the venerable level." "Say it." Fang Gu said nothing and nodded. "I hope you won't disappoint me." After coming up, Shan Yu squeezed the magic formula and started to operate the hull. He raised his eyebrows and said, "I didn't expect that someone would take over my task." Shan Yu patted her chest and said confidently, "The Black Demon Sect still has a city? Shouldn't a top force like it compete with other sects for hegemony?" Seeing this scene, Fang Gu raised his eyebrows, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. A handsome-looking man with red lips and white teeth opened his eyes, with a hint of surprise on his plain expression. Immediately, the 2 of them sat on the boat. There are various cries and noisy sounds in the city. There was a lot of people and it was really lively. Hee hee. Shan Yu chuckled. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 208. Furthermore, the Black Demon Sect controls countless cities. This city is only slightly weaker among all the cities of the Black Demon Sect. And this is also a better place for hunting. Otherwise, as you said, if you go near the Black Demon Sect, let alone hunting, it would be very good if you are not killed by the strong men of the Black Demon Sect for no reason. Got it? And even if the hunt is successful, we can't escape, so there is no need to go there. After hearing Shan Yu's coherent words, Fang Gu nodded without refuting anything. After all, this was indeed the case. Shan Yu's approach is indeed safer. If this is the case, are we going to hunt down this martial venerable? Or? Hearing this, Shan Yu was stunned for a while, looked at Fang Gu with wide eyes, and said helplessly. How could it be possible? This is a martial venerable. How can we hunt a person who can control us with one hand? Isn't this looking for death? Then he covered his face again, seemingly speechless at what Fang Gu just said. We are going to hunt his son Yuan Feng. This way, the success rate is higher. After all, the other people are too strong. The two of us are no match for them. Fang Gu nodded, not minding what Shan Yu said about him, and asked, then where is this person's son? Here it is. Shan Yu pointed to the pavilion on the side, and saw the 4 characters Jade Beauty written on the plaque above the pavilion. Inside. Fang Gu was slightly startled, feeling a little surprised. Unexpectedly, the person he wanted to kill was right in front of him. Shan Yu didn't pay attention to Fang Gu's expression and continued, as far as I know, this person's current strength is only about the martial spirit realm, which just meets our hunting strength. Hearing this, Fang Gu's eyes burned brightly, and a trace of murderous intent arose in his heart. He said, okay, in that case, let's get ready to take action now. Immediately, a black curved blade appeared in Fang Gu's hand, and the deep chill emanating from it was shocking. This is the yellow rank high-grade spirit weapon Evil Blade that Fang Gu spent all his spirit stones to exchange for from others. Hey, don't be anxious yet, don't be anxious, just wait, come back, come back. Shan Yu quickly grabbed Fang Gu's arm and spoke to stop him. Seeing this scene, Fang Gu was a little confused, put away the bloody blade, and asked with a puzzled expression, what's wrong, senior brother? Shouldn't we do it now? Shan Yu shook her head and said, we definitely shouldn't do it now. We have to wait a while. Although this person is easy to kill, the people behind him are not easy to kill. Protector. Fang Gu said these 3 words. That's right. Shan Yu nodded solemnly. As the son of a strong martial venerable, it is natural that he has a protector. Otherwise, with his character, this kid would have died on the way. So we have to find an opportunity. There must be at least a 100% chance to hunt him. Otherwise, we will lose a lot of money. What's his strength? Fang Gu asked again. As long as his strength does not reach that of Liuzong, Fang Gu is not afraid. He has a backup. As long as his backup is used, a martial sovereign strong man is no different from an ant. Half-step Liuzong, and there are 2 of them. 2 people? Fang Gu frowned and fell into deep thought. 2 half-step martial masters would be a bit of a problem. If I had reached the strength of a martial grandmaster now, I might be able to solve it easily. After all, Fang Gu's backhands are divided according to their own strength. He couldn't help but turn his attention to Shan Yu and found that his expression was very calm, as if he didn't care about the 2 half-step martial arts masters. Senior brother, you are so mediocre, is it possible that you have some ideas? That's natural. Shan Yu smiled and nodded, and then a small magic circle appeared in his hand. This is... Fang Gu's eyes revealed a hint of doubt. Then Shan Yu explained, this array is called the Blood Array, and I spent 5,000 spirit stones to get it, senior brother. As long as I use this formation, I won't be afraid even if they have 2 half-step martial arts masters. Seeing this, Fang Gu raised his eyebrows, with a hint of surprise in his eyes, and a hint of curiosity in his heart. Oh. The old man nodded, then turned his attention to Shan Yu, and said with a smile, little brother, is there anyone you like? Boom. Yes. Yes, the young man nodded quickly, and then stepped back with respect. Fang Gu glanced around the room and waved to the young man behind him, "Get out of here. No one can come in without an order from the two of us. Do you hear that?" Afterwards, the two didn't say much. A bag of spirit stones appeared in his hand, and he threw it into the old man's hand. He said with an indifferent expression, "Is that enough? Ask the brother next to me." The old man looked at the spirit stone in his hand with bright eyes and nodded immediately, "That's enough, of course it's enough." Immediately, Shan Yu aimed at the magic circle in his hand with a solemn expression and began to pour spiritual energy. Shan Yu was shocked all over. "Of course you can. Wow." Shan Yu smiled and nodded. Seeing this scene, Shan Yu seemed to understand something. "Hey! You can't look at this." Seeing this, Shan Yu coughed slightly and said with a serious look, "Just arrange a good room for the two of us. As for who wants to order, it doesn't matter." Seeing this, the two nodded and followed. "Why don't you take them all out and let your junior brother see them?" "This," the old man looked a little hesitant, "this is not in line with the rules." A large amount of spiritual power emerged from Shan Yu's palm. Immediately, he shouted to the young man on the other side who was in a daze, "Little Dan, come here quickly and help the two adults arrange the room." Hearing this, Fang Gu glanced at him and pointed at Shan Yu beside him. The reason why the treasure is called a treasure is that it cannot be taken out for viewing. But you can rest assured that if you encounter anything, senior brother, I will definitely use it without hesitation. He smiled and asked, "I wonder who you two would like to order." After looking around, the magic circle just appeared in his hand. "Senior brother, how many good treasures do you have?" As soon as the young man heard this, he immediately reacted and came to the two of them cautiously. After a few breaths, the three of them came to an antique room. As soon as the two came in, an old man wearing a grey robe came to them. Fang Gu looked at Shan Yu and asked. "Jumped off the boat and came to the attic. Can we start now? What you see before you when you fall asleep are noisy voices, some unsightly images and disgusting words." Shan Yu quickly waved her hand. "My lords, please follow me. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 209. The next moment, the magic circle flashed with red light, revealing the blood-colored gas in it. The gas began to wander like little snakes, seeming to be absorbing something. Seeing this scene, Shan Yu nodded with great satisfaction. Then he placed the magic circle on the ground. Immediately, the ground shook slightly, but stopped again. I saw the flickering magic circle appearing around the whole pavilion, like poisonous snakes, starting to watch everyone. It seems that he wants to give everyone a fatal blow when they are defenseless. Then, under Shan Yu's control, he hid in the dark. Now, it can be said that the life and death of everyone in the entire pavilion has been firmly controlled by Shan Yu from this moment on. Of course, you have to wait until the blood array energy is filled up. Otherwise Shan Yu would have taken action long ago. How could he wait until now? Fang Gu, who was standing aside, saw this scene, raised his brows, and a hint of surprise flashed in his bright eyes. "I didn't expect that senior brother Shan Yu, who is an outer sect, can actually use formations, and he seems to be very familiar with this action." An idea couldn't help but arise in my heart. At the same time, under the house, a strong man with a sturdy body was having a thrilling battle with a beautiful woman on the bed. The bed shook slightly and made a creaking sound, as if it would start to collapse in the next moment. But when it was about to collapse, the strong man seemed to hear something, frowned, and stopped his movements. This stop seemed to pull the woman opposite him out of the abyss, and began to breathe heavily. The strong man wiped the smelly sweat from his forehead, then raised his head and looked upward, and said with an unhappy expression, "Damn, who is that person up here? Why is the noise so loud? He's even more awesome than me." Then he yelled dissatisfiedly, "Keep your voice down." After saying that, the strong man grabbed the woman who had not rested yet and continued to fight fiercely, as if he wanted to consume all his energy. Bang bang bang. SHH. 3 floors of the pavilion. In a spacious antique room. A man with extraordinary appearance and half-naked body was sitting quietly on the ground with his eyes closed. The sweat on the body is like raindrops, and the tears are falling down. The sweat fell to the ground, which was a little moist. This feeling made the man look a little unhappy. And around the man, there were several women with pale faces and voluptuous figures. I saw several women gasping slightly, their eyes wandering, and their faces extremely tired. It seemed that a battle had just occurred, leaving them with no energy left to stand up again. Hoo-hoo. A sound of exhalation came. Then the man sitting cross-legged on the ground opened his dark eyes, clenched his fists, stood up, looked at his body again, raised the corners of his mouth slightly, and laughed, "Ha ha, martial spirit has reached its peak. You will be able to break through to the martial king in no time, this training speed is really fast." As soon as the man finished speaking, 2 figures wearing blue robes appeared behind him. The 2 of them had respectful expressions on their faces, leaned over and cupped their hands. "Congratulations, young master, for reaching the peak of martial spirit." Hearing this, the man didn't speak and just nodded, but he couldn't hide the satisfied smile on his face. The man was in a very happy mood at this time. Then he lowered his head and glanced around. I found several women collapsed on the ground, unable to get up. This scene made the man look a little displeased. He snorted coldly and ordered the 2 people behind him in disgust, "You 2, hurry up and throw these women out. What do they look like? I'm really dirty, eyes of the Lord, hurry, hurry." Yes. Hearing the man's words, the 2 of them did not dare to be disrespectful and quickly replied with their hands in hand. Isn't it just with the help of their energy to practice? As for showing like this, the man curled his lips again. After a while, the room was completely clean. The figures of several women on the ground also disappeared in an instant. Seeing this scene, the man nodded with great satisfaction, feeling the strength in his body, and said with a smile, "I have reached the peak of martial spirit. If my father knows about it, he will definitely be very happy." He he. Having said this, the man sat on the table and chair nearby. When he saw the bottles of wine on the table, his eyes moved. He took the bottles of wine on the table and started to drink heavily. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr relaxed, as if he had entered the Western paradise. It's so comfortable. Sure enough, Dad is right. Although beauty is good and can satisfy one's selfish desires, it is not as comfortable as drinking wine. Then the man hummed a little tune and put on his shirt. It's not so much a top as it is a snow-white robe. This robe is not comparable to ordinary things, it is a defensive treasure. In times of crisis, it can save the owner's life. This thing was given to the man by his father. The snow-white robe combined with the man's handsome face seems to exude a different and strange charm, making women fall into their arms at the first sight. The man's name is Yuan Feng, and he is the son of Yuan Tian, the lord of Xiao City. As Yuan Tian's son, Yuan Feng's talent is naturally not bad, and he will definitely be among the top. This sentence is indeed true. On the day of the qualification test, Yuan Feng's own qualifications reached high grade, and he also had a physical constitution, Yuan body. As the name suggests, it is a physique that can drive a woman's essence to be cultivated for oneself, which is several times faster than the cultivation speed of ordinary high-grade qualifications. The messy and extremely obscene scene just now was caused by Yuan Feng. That's why Yuan Feng can break through to martial spirit. Immediately, Yuan Feng opened the door, and the next moment, a maid with plump breasts and a delicate face walked up immediately, with a respectful look on her face, and she bowed and said, "Young Master Yuan." Listening to the maid's sweet voice, Yuan Feng nodded with satisfaction, and then asked, "Where is your steward here?" After hearing this, the maid thought for a while and replied, "Young Master Yuan, Manager Qi is currently talking to a mysterious man on the 5th floor. Does young Master Yuan ask this to ask him something? If so, maid, you have to report it first." "Nonsense." Yuan Feng cursed angrily. "Who am I to ask this question if not him? Do you not understand? I really don't know how you learned from that guy. You don't understand any rules, huh?" After finishing speaking, Yuan Feng seemed to want to scold her again, but when he saw the maid's annoying expression, he was immediately disgusted. How could he feel like saying any more? Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 210. He quickly waved to her and said with disgust, "Gun Gun, disappear in front of my eyes immediately. Don't let me see you again. You really make me feel sick." "Yes, yes." Seeing that she had made Yuan Feng unhappy, the maid looked a little flustered and a little scared. It wasn't until Yuan Feng told her to get out that she breathed a sigh of relief and quickly got up and left the place. Snort. Seeing the maid leave, Yuan Feng snorted coldly. The good mood he had just been in was completely gone at this moment. On the 2nd floor of the pavilion, inside a house, Fang Gu sat on the chair, his eyes quietly looking at Shan Yu, who had her eyes closed tightly. The two didn't talk, they seemed to be waiting for something. How many breaths have passed? Shan Yu opened her eyes, looked at Fang Gu opposite and said, "I used the magic circle to see that guy's figure. He is now on the 3rd floor of the pavilion." Fang Gu raised his eyebrows and said in a deep voice, "Are you planning to attack him?" Shan Yu shook her head, "Of course that won't work. The energy of the blood array hasn't gathered yet, so we have to wait at least another half hour or so." "But what if this guy leaves within half an hour?" Fang Gu asked again. Hearing this, Shan Yu looked confident and said, "How is it possible? According to my understanding, this guy usually leaves when it is almost sunset, and now it is still early." "Very. So, junior brother Fang, you don't need to worry about this. This guy won't leave. We just need to wait patiently." Seeing this, Fang Gu didn't say anything else. He sat on the ground with his legs crossed, closed his eyes, and began to practice quietly with spiritual energy swirling around him. When Shan Yu saw this scene, her expression did not change, but she was filled with emotion in her heart. "Sure enough, junior brother Fang, although your talent is low, you work hard enough. No wonder you have such cultivation. I wish I could work as hard as you." Finished. Time passed slowly, and half an hour later came in the blink of an eye. Inside the house, Shan Yu patted Fang Gu, who was practicing, and shouted softly, "Junior brother Fang." Hearing Shan Yu's cry, Fang Gu opened his eyes and said, "What's wrong, senior brother? Has the time come?" Shan Yu nodded and said, "It's definitely time, get ready to start taking action. The next step will be the time to kill. This guy is already a turtle in the urn now." Shan Yu smiled, with a hint of ruthlessness in his expression. This was the first time Fang Gu had seen him. It did surprise him. But he didn't think too much and just stood up. He took out the evil blade from the space ring. His face also turned cold at this moment, and his eyes revealed a strong murderous intent. Boom! The next moment, under the influence of the blood array, the entire attic slowly began to shake. This situation naturally caused everyone who was fighting to be more vigilant and stop their next actions. What's going on? Get out of here, steward. I'm enjoying my life. Why does the pavilion suddenly start to move at this moment? What's going on? Is it possible that someone can make the pavilion move while someone is playing? What's going on? Why is this pavilion starting to move? Outside the house, there were bursts of noises, and angry curses. When Yuan Feng, who was staying in the house, saw this scene, he frowned and looked a little unhappy. He said to the two people hiding in the dark, "You two, go check and see if something happened." "Yes." "Ah!" Suddenly, a scream came from outside the house. Puff! Another burst of assassination sounds came. Blood immediately flowed from the house into the room. When Yuan Feng, who was standing in the room, saw this scene, his face looked a little panicked, and he regretted that he had just sent out his protector. Before Yuan Feng could make any move, a wave wrapped around his whole body, causing the black figure whose face could not be seen to instantly break through the door and come to him. The speed was so fast that Yuan Feng could not react at all. The figure strangled his neck, making Yuan Feng unable to move at all. He started to struggle non-stop, trying to use his spiritual power, but the spiritual power in his body seemed to be blocked violently at this moment, and he couldn't use it at all. Seeing this, Yuan Feng felt a trace of despair in his heart, but thinking about his identity and background, he laughed again. Then he looked at this man with an arrogant expression and shouted loudly, "Let me go, young master. Do you know who you are arresting now? My father is a martial venerable. Be careful, your life will be gone soon. If you don't want to die, let me go quickly." This sentence made Ying angry and laugh at the same time. He snorted coldly, "I don't care who you are. From the moment I killed you, I have never been afraid of your identity and that strong martial venerable. So, you should stop talking nonsense and think about how to escape from me next, hum." As soon as the words fell, the figure didn't give him the slightest chance. He increased his strength and pinched hard. "Ah!" Yuan Feng looked ferocious and screamed. The sound of bones breaking was heard, and the next moment, the arrogant Yuan Feng died like this, extremely unwillingly. If there is another life, he will never wait until the sun sets before leaving. Snort. Seeing this scene, the figure snorted disdainfully. He took off his black clothes and revealed his handsome face. The figure is Shan Yu. Immediately, two more figures flew in without warning from outside the house. Shan Yu looked up. What they found were two corpses covered in blood and bruises. These two people are Yuan Feng's protectors. Unfortunately for the two of them, as soon as they went out to check, they were noticed by Fang Gu. So the result of waiting is nothing more than death. As for how Fang Gu surpassed the level of martial master and killed the half-step Wuzong, this is because their own spiritual power has been firmly blocked by the blood formation, resulting in the fact that their half-step martial arts strength cannot be used at all. Otherwise, forget about watching, I'm afraid the square bones will be blown away with just one slap. After half a stick of incense, Fang Gu, holding the evil blade in his hand, stepped in from the door with an indifferent expression. His body was dripping with blood, and he was as terrifying as a devil coming out of hell. His eyes were filled with murderous intent, making people dare not show the slightest disrespect. However, this blood was not Fang Gu's own, but the blood splattered from countless people who had been killed. Seeing this scene, Shan Yu frowned slightly and asked, "You won't kill everyone outside, right?" Hearing this, Fang Gu nodded indifferently, with a calm expression on his face. It seemed that to him, the person he just killed was no different than trampling an ant to death.